And we're live. It is Friday. It is July 11th. It is 8 o'clock a.m. and the cactus, I'm afraid, is still dead. The efforts to revive him have gone on. Holly has announced from Kenya that we will have to have a funeral. That is very likely to happen. I'm sure we will cover the funeral live on Dogshirt TV. We're all in a bad place about the whole thing, except the snowman, who has his usual veneer. Yeah. Hello, Holly. We were just talking about
Hello.
the bad place we are all in about the cactus.
Oh, yeah. Well, I blame you, of course, even though it's probably my fault because
No, he was dead by the time he got here.
you think so?
Yeah, I know it.
I think,
I,
Yes,
no, I
John.
think,
I
I
just
think,
want to offer I will be in DC on Monday night and Tuesday during the day, and I am happy to exercise some cactus surgery skills to take him home and see what I can do for him.
I'm afraid he will be buried by then because we are
Okay.
having a cactus funeral
oh, without
on the
me?
show. No, you'll be here on Monday.
I don't know that
Um,
I'll be here on Monday.
well, you're gonna have to look. I mean, when your friends die and you miss their funerals, it says something about you. There are more important things in Holly's life, it seems, than burying her friend, the cactus. And all we can say about that is, we make choices in life. Um, but
Well,
thank you, John. It's good of you to
you know what I
suggest.
think happened, though? I think
I'm
you
afraid rigor
electrocuted.
mortis has already set in on the cactus.
No,
I,
I think
I
you
You
fear that
electrocuted him with the wrong current trying to charge him, and you electrocuted him.
I fear that my guidance to take video in the case of electrocution was not followed. So since we haven't heard anything about the video, no comments about the magic smoke, I don't know what that means.
I will just say the cactus was good and dead when he showed up. I pressed that button a few times, and
You
Holly's
know there's
not
a
going to come.
switch. Do you know there's a switch on the bottom?
Yeah, I've moved the switch back and forth. I've
Okay.
pressed the button, and the cactus just stays there in his. And I made a yeoman's effort to charge him. I even tried to open up the box to see if I could replace a battery. The guy is just stone dead, I'm afraid, John. It's
Okay, so
beyond surgery.
here's the question, and this is what my parents used to do actually when we would be at school and our goldfish died, they just would go get another goldfish and we never knew the difference. So my
Well,
question
so
is,
I don't believe in lying to children or to the viewers of Dogshirt TV. We're gonna bury the cactus, and that's gonna
But I
happen.
understand also, Ben, you don't believe in the resurrection, right?
I Look, I'm Jewish. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
and
My
so look, I believe in resurrection of the dead, but only in that weird Jewish sense of the term, not in the, cave is empty kind of.
To be honest, I don't know what the weird Jewish sense is.
neither do I.
Well, when the Messiah comes, the dead are going to rise and all
So
march
like
to
Emil
glory.
Bovy.
Yeah, well, Emil Bovy is evidence of resurrection of the dead, or at least of undead. Um, And so all of that is just a long-winded way of saying that the sun, nonetheless, notwithstanding the demise of the cactus, is shining. The birds are chirping. It's gonna be a great freaking day, at least for those of us on this side of the earth. And you are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a freaking revolution in morning television. And let me tell you about some of the revolutionary features. One of the revolutionary features of which there are many, is that sometimes we have a news event, like a say an imposition of tariffs on Canada, and I make an executive decision that we're having a show about new tariffs. And so I do the responsible thing as a talk show host, which is, I start tweeting at people who are saying interesting things on Blue Sky about the whatever's going on. And so, I tweet at Catherine Rampell and say, are you coming on the show tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning? Or maybe even I said it this morning at 6:30 or something. And I tweet at Justin Wolfers and I say, hey,
I have stories about both them.
Are you coming on the show? And that's one, and then, they don't respond, which is, so rude. Because, they should be waiting for their notices on Blue Sky, their mentions, to see if I've invited them on the show this morning. And that's what everybody does in the evening, right? And so then you say, okay, we haven't had Alex Petri on the show for a long time, so we're gonna tweet at Alex Petri, and she doesn't respond. I mean, freaking rude, man. And so then about 15 minutes before the show, you send a text message to Mike Feinberg, who before this week has never done an interview in his life. And you say, dude, are you coming on the show in 15 minutes? And his response is, do I need to shave? And
you said, no, I wear a dog shirt every day on the show.
Yeah,
You don't need
and
to look even like a human.
right. And so one of the revolutionary features is that, we just tweet rudely at people and expect them to show up. Another one of the revolutionary features is that when that strategy of getting people to come on and talk about tariffs inexplicably fails, and let's face it, I don't know why anybody would think that would think that a distinguished economist, the nation's leading economics writer, and the nation's leading political humorist would not leap at a mere Blue Sky tweet from me saying, come on the show in 15 minutes. It's not like they have anything to do. That we can get the celebrity former FBI agent of the week on short notice.
Of the week. There will be others. Trust
There'll be
me.
many. I think I've
Yeah.
seen a few others making the
Yeah,
rounds.
and also, Mike was not known by the public until last week and has not done any interviews until this week. And so, I just want you all to appreciate the efforts that me and my team go through to produce this show every day for you. Mike Feinberg, we're not allowed to have fun anymore, but finally we are allowed to have Mike Feinberg on the show. Welcome.
Before I cede to Mike Feinberg, who is a far greater American than I, and also because I probably it'll take forever for my part to upload. Let me just ask you, Ben. Here's the real question, though. To go back to the cactus, do we get another cactus, or we just let it die? Let the bit die.
I just want to say, this is like the first act of Hamlet here. The cactus is not even in the ground, and she's looking for a new cactus.
The cactus was great, though. I mean, everybody loved the cactus, and I'm sure I could get one just like it. It's not like a human that someone dies and.
Ben, one of the
just appalled.
One of the great
My
sorrows of
cactus. Sorry.
Would you be in the hunt for a new Kevin?
No,
this
Kevin
fast?
is not a talking cactus that I bought at Walmart.
Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was glad to hear you make Hamlet reference. I actually threw one into my resignation letter, and it has been noticed and remarked upon by literally absolutely nobody who has read it, including anybody from the FBI, which is a little disappointing, but none of the general population either, and that's really disappointing.
Well, you know, I feel like when the cactus goes, we should at least have, a period of mourning and not to mention triumph for the snowman before we go talking about replacing the cactus. And I'm sure he is looking down on us, disappointed, Holly, at the speed with which you have forgotten him.
Okay, maybe we should get and so, the snowman is mediocre as a mascot because he doesn't do anything. But anyway,
Well, I'm just saying, like, there's a discrete period. I mean, even the church doesn't have a conclave like the net before they bury the Pope.
okay, but the cactus has been not really being seen in public for a couple weeks now.
Yeah, well, that's like the Soviet leadership. I mean, we didn't, you didn't talk about replacing them just because they were, uh, you know, comatose.
Okay, I think you've put Michael Feinberg through enough cactus talk, and I will excuse myself. But I do want to say that as a that I know Michael or Mike. I don't know if what you go by. I've read some of your. I think I read your piece in Lawfare, so I know a little bit about your story. And my understanding is you were fired for being friends with someone. Is that right?
So yeah, I want to be precise in the language. I wasn't fired. I resigned, but it was under circumstances where I would
duress.
never be promoted. I would be demoted. My career was over.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, I have
that's
to
the
say
gist of
that
it.
my goal in life is to be such a terror to the Trumpists that all of my friends have to resign from the CIA. So I'm working I'm working on that. And
What's the body count so far, Holly? How many
well,
people at CIA have had to
I have
resign
people
because
who
they're
are
friends
no
with you?
longer responding to my texts and are defriending me on Facebook because apparently they want to have a long career. And I think I'm making a dent. Charlie Kirk, tweeted about me, and Elon Musk
Yeah,
commented on
retweeted
it.
it.
So
Yeah, that's
although he
good.
didn't ever respond to my baiting of him with another parody specifically to him. So, I feel like I'm doing my best.
Well, okay. I mean, while we're talking about, denouncing friends, Dan Bongino and I actually have one thing in common, which is, well, that's actually, we have two things in common. We've both been podcasters, and we are both gonna, demanding that you denounce your friend Pete Strzok, because Pete Strzok has been on this show, and he has sworn up and down that he will never wear a dog shirt. And I just want to get you on the record. Um, is that okay? Or should you come on this? And I want to point out that today is an emu shirt day, which is to dog shirts what dog shirts are to normal shirts. Um, uh, you know, I want to hear your position on Pete's anti-dog shirtism.
I'm with Pete. I hate to say it. I'm sorry, but I'm the sort of person. I literally don't own a single item of clothing that is not just a solid color or earth tone.
And you don't consider that a personal failing?
I consider it a point of pride. I mean, no, I mean, I think I have
Creature
a.
of Bob Mueller's FBI here.
That's probably the real reason I'm out is my unwillingness to don UFC themed
Or all
logo
leather.
T-shirts in a work environment.
Or
Yeah.
what about the leather Kash Patel has a whole leather. Does he wear leather? Did you witness him in leather?
No, I was never in the same building as him during his tenure, so I
Because he
can't
lives in Las
testify
Vegas?
to his sartorial, um, yeah, to his
Did you know
sartorial
that the headquarters of the
preferences. I
FBI
will
was
say
in
it's
Vegas?
sort of a running joke in the bureau that he does drive a cherry red Tesla Cybertruck, but
That's
that's
ugly.
the only idiosyncrasy of his aesthetic choices I can really speak to personally.
But he lives in
Did
Las
you?
Vegas, right? So no wonder you never
Part
saw him.
time, yeah.
Yeah, were
Part
you
time.
aware that FBI headquarters was actually in Vegas?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some theological metaphor we could reach for, but I like to think that FBI headquarters is wherever the director is at any given time.
So it is in Vegas. So I
Yeah,
mean, there's a
It's a
lot of.
movable feast.
I bet there's
Yeah.
a lot of criming there. There's a lot of crimes that could be encountered and
I'm sure
solved.
there's a lot of white collar and public
He may be
corruption
committing some of them. I
violations
don't know.
in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, the FBI no longer does those. So,
Oh,
Right.
yes. That's what I heard.
Right. The FBI is a support agency for the Border Patrol and ICE. You guys are just kind of analytic backup.
Can I ask Mike a serious question though? So, yeah, how do you like how are you processing all of this? And like, I mean, I assume you had envisioned a longer career and you had goals and hopes and dreams for yourself that now you're having to reconfigure. So how are you managing all this?
in the spirit of an honest question, I'll give you an honest answer. I'm really not. I haven't had time to process it because, you know, all this boils down to, at the time this happened, my wife was 7 months pregnant into a pretty high risk pregnancy. And we're now like 3 weeks and some days away from that. I haven't had time to, aside from the writing of the piece for Lawfare, I haven't had time to really process it or assimilate what it means for my life going forward, just because I've been trying to focus on the more important stuff headed my way, which is the birth of my son and the health of my wife, and just getting the house in order, going to all the doctor's appointments that we have. You know, I've been getting some media requests, which I'm trying to do as much as I can. But I haven't really processed what happened in any sort of significant emotional or psychological way yet.
Well, I'm gonna go soon, but I just want to say I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for you. I'm really sorry for the country and the bureau, and it's just makes me sad all the way around. Your story and others that I've seen in the government, but it's specifically at DOJ. So anyway,
I appreciate
you're a great
that.
American.
Thanks.
Holly, welcome. Great to see you. Enjoy the rest of the safari, and we will see you in a week or so.
I'm now at my boarding school for alumni weekend. That's why I'm wearing like a million layers because it's freezing cold here. So
Whoa, alumni weekend
yeah,
at the missionary kids
boarding school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so one question. How have you been received there?
Well, I haven't actually, I'm at a guest house near campus. I haven't actually set foot on campus. I assume I'll be received well, but there were a couple alumni on this trip with me, and one of them, her husband told me that her father, who is a missionary who was my dorm parent, had warned him about me.
Well,
So
that's
again,
fair.
I feel like I'm accomplishing things when people are warning others about me. And
Yeah,
if I can
so
get some people fired, no, and all joking aside, I know
well,
it's
I think
terrible.
we should have when is the release date for the book?
August 19th. Oh, and I did tell you that Politics and Prose has rejected me.
Yeah, so Politics and Prose has rejected Holly. We are going to compensate for that. We're going to do a special show live from Politics and Prose.
Side
Um,
pot.
um, and we are going to Holly and I are going to do a show from Politics and Prose, and we may invite friends, um, uh, and and um, you don't ask permission, you ask forgiveness. And so that's going to happen, but we're going to do it when Holly is back. Before that, next week, while Holly is away, I may steal an hour of her time to do an after action report on, Missionary Kids School Revisited. It's a little known Evelyn Waugh book. That Holly is the main character of. And we're going to get an after action report on going to the reunion after writing this book where
It's not out
parents are
yet, so not many people have actually read it. They've just
right, but they
heard.
know about it and their parents are warning them about it and they're, in their 50s and still listening to warnings from their parents.
They didn't
Um,
listen, no.
so yeah, it's gonna be epic. That'll be next week sometime, whether Holly likes it or not.
Okay. All
See you
right.
later, Holly.
All right. Bye.
So, Mike, how many interviews have you done this week, and with whom?
So I did the podcast with you. I did the brief hit on CNN. I've been told they're called hits.
Yes.
So I did a brief hit on CNN. I did 2 pieces on MSNBC, and I found out late yesterday that MSNBC would like to have me on again today. I've declined a few podcasts this week just for the sake of my own sanity, but I'm hoping to do them in a week or so, just as I sort of get my feet wet in this new world.
And so, when you go from a person who doesn't really even have a social media presence, and your idea of online engagement is, you know, texting individuals to having a viral article and going on MSNBC multiple times a day. Uh, how does it, change your life? Are like people you went to grade school with coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Oh, I knew you when you were like on the baseball team"?
Yeah, there's been some of that. Like the parents of childhood friends whom I haven't seen in probably 3 decades have been reaching out to my parents. My high school advisor reached out to me a couple nights ago. Um, Trying to think. I mean, it hasn't been that overwhelming, but it's been overwhelming enough for somebody who, quite frankly, had never even seen any of the podcasts or shows on which he appeared, to all of a sudden be on them. It's a bit of a swerve.
I will try to ignore the comment about never having seen any of the
No,
podcasts.
it's nothing to do that shouldn't be taken as an
I'm
editorial
joking.
comment. It's basically I worked a lot of hours. And for most of the time that I was doing that, I also lived in cities with horrific traffic, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. I just was never home when any of this stuff was on. And if I was home, I was usually
Well,
trying to unplug and
podcasts you can
de-stress.
listen to in the car and stuff.
I know, but I'm one of those people, the car is where I get awake. It's where I have my coffee. I listen to music, sometimes audiobooks. And this is going to sound a little weird. When I did listen to podcasts, which I occasionally would, I almost invariably chose podcasts on topics about which I know nothing. So I was, to the extent I did listen to podcasts, they were usually about like literature or film or historical figures. I can't recall the last time I did one on a current event or the
So
political scene.
what so what has been, as you've been on these shows that you've never seen before, and what's the biggest surprise of the whole rollout of the week?
Um, this isn't, I don't know that this is a surprise. It's more of a slight disappointment, but very few of these venues really give you the time to go in depth into the nuances and more interesting digressions of whatever it is you've written about or have something important on which to say. I think there's a lot of interesting questions that my resignation and the circumstances that sort of forced it naturally bring to the surface. And they're the sort of things that you need a digressive conversation to really get into. And none of the multimedia formats really offer that, which I guess, the silver lining is it gives me more ideas of things to write about as I approach that avenue of expression. Um, yeah, that was a
So what's
a
an
meandering
example?
answer of the sort I don't usually get to give on these shows.
Yeah, so what's an example of a question that in a that you've been asked over the last few days that in a different context you would have a discursive answer to that would raise issues that you haven't been in a position to give.
So, most of the questions I'm getting are about Patel and Bongino. Um, I don't actually find Patel and Bongino to be that interesting of a character type. I'm much more curious about the relatively senior functionaries who agree to take positions immediately below them. The career government officials who are willing to look past some of their faults or some of the policies they're pursuing for the sake of personal gain or for job security, and what that says about larger issues of integrity, the meaning of our oath of office, moral choices and moral hazards, that sort of thing. And, look, that's a question that has been trod by better thinkers than I. I mean, Hannah Arendt, Robert J. Lifton, there have been books written on this subject. But we've never really seen it in an American context. So that's something in my own writing that I'm really hoping to sort of delve into.
And we've also never seen it, um, you know, you've never seen it up close, right? I mean,
Correct.
Eichmann was in Jerusalem, but Feinberg was not. And
No, no.
um, and you do have there is the stuff that you've seen that's um why do you not find Patel and Bongino interesting characters in this conversation though?
Because they're completely transparent about who they are. I mean, they're interesting in that there doesn't really appear to be a lot of self-actualization is not the right word, but there's no real delta between the public persona they project and who they actually are. What makes people interesting, just as a matter of course, I think, is that we all have sort of different sides depending on our audience, our context, with whom we're interacting one on one. Our personalities are pretty complex, and you really have to get to know somebody in a few contexts to really get to know them. I don't think Patel or Bongino have that sort of depth that would make interacting with them in different circumstances or really doing a deep dive into their record of statements. You're just not going to find anything surprising or probing there.
Are they so the cardboard cutout version that you would get from listening to, say, a Democratic senator speak about Kash Patel or listening to one Dan Bongino rant about on his podcast, that's who they are?
That's my understanding. I mean, look, I haven't personally interacted with these people. I have a lot of friends who have, and the rumor mill at the Bureau is a pretty active engine. So you hear about things usually within a half hour of when they happen. And my understanding from everybody who has interacted with either of them is that that's the case.
I will say that I have interacted with Dan Bongino, albeit on Twitter, back when I was on Twitter and he was on Twitter, and it was one of the weirdest interactions I've had with anybody on Twitter.
And I think that impression would be shared by most of the senior FBI officials who have interacted with him as well. What is going on the seventh floor of the J. Edgar Hoover building is not something with a lot of historical analogies.
Right. A lot of shouting and dressing down and
Yeah.
temper tantrums.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about more interesting things.
Please, because I am sick to death of talking about my personal circumstances. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about the New York Times' story yesterday about polygraphing people. About whether they've said anything bad about Kash Patel. Do you have any knowledge of whether this is true? I mean, I assume it's true because Adam Goldman is a serious guy.
I have quite a bit of knowledge about this because it's happened to a lot of friends. It would take more than one hand to count the number of people I know who have been impacted by this particular endeavor of Patel and Bongino's. And I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about it later today on one of the cable news shows. I don't want to get into the specifics of what I know because the difficulty about what I'm trying to do in going public is I want to shine a light on these things, but I need to do it in a fashion where I'm not endangering any of the friends whose integrity and judgment I trust.
Of course.
That are still at the FBI. And I'll just say this, based on everything I personally know and what I was told was going to happen to me, there is not a thing that is not true in Goldman's piece in the New York Times.
All right, so let's not delve into that further than that as a factual matter.
Yeah.
But I want to delve into it as a conceptual matter and as a legal matter. What authority does the FBI have to demand that people submit to a polygraph on something that's not a security matter?
Yeah,
leaving aside if it's First Amendment protected.
So I'm not sure it's not a security matter. There are FBI policies and guidelines that we are required to go by that cover, for example, media interactions. And I actually don't have a problem with the use of polygraphs to determine if somebody has leaked information to the media. I don't think it's a particularly accurate accurate investigative tool. I'm not really positive of its probative value, but I don't have a moral or legal objection to using polygraphs for that purpose. Where it gets problematic is when you're using it to discern whether anybody has bad-mouthed the director or deputy director. The polygraph is an investigative tool, which means it's governed by something we call DIA, which is the Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide. And theoretically, in order to use any real investigative tool of import, there are some things like really basic open records checks that don't apply to what I'm going to say. But generally, to use a more sophisticated investigative tool, you need to have an open investigation of some sort. I mean, something needs to have been put on paper documenting what criminal violation or national security threat you're trying to mitigate before you use any of these techniques.
Right.
And I don't know what making fun of the fact that Kash Patel has requested a gun or is now wearing a badge violates any law or poses a threat to national security. So I'm not quite sure under what legal authority you could put people through these sort of loyalty tests.
Yeah, so that's my that's sort of my question. I mean, you have let's hypothesize you have a leak.
Yeah.
You suspect an agent, a particular special agent of a particular leak. Or, no question you can polygraph everybody you suspect of.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court has been very clear. You could use polygraphs as a general matter for the purposes of granting or renewing security clearances.
Right.
So you're on firm ground in those situations.
Okay, so we suspect that Mike Feinberg is leaking information in general, and maybe he shouldn't have a security clearance. You can polygraph him in that context.
100%.
No
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about something else.
Yeah.
We have a rumor that Mike Feinberg is friends with Pete Strzok.
Right.
And we confronted him about it, and he confirmed that they were friends.
Yeah.
There's no specific leak. There's no, Pete Strzok is not somebody who is ever accused of a security violation. He's not
even somebody who has been in the public eye at this point for the better part of a decade.
Well,
I mean,
he's been on television a fair bit.
He's been on television, but look, he's not a Frank Figliuzzi or an Asher Rangappa who is regularly appearing on TV to comment on the FBI.
Right.
People aren't using him for pull quotes in major articles about what's going on. You know,
right.
He's
He's
at this
actually,
point, he's sort of quietly living his life. Yeah.
Right. So the question is, what authority does the FBI have in the absence of a security clearance review, which presumably they have lots of authority to trigger, to say you're politically suspect, and we want to submit you to a polygraph test on something other than, presumably, among other things, whether you've made political criticisms of the director or deputy director.
There is no authority of which I am aware, but we're also sort of through the looking glass in terms of what the FBI looks like at this point. So, norms and policies are not the guardrails they used to be.
And your knowledge of the, separate from your situation, you're aware that Adam's story to this effect is true.
Yeah,
that this stuff is happening.
My understanding is
routinely.
this is a pretty widespread occurrence now. And it's a pretty regular occurrence. It wasn't like a one and done type thing. This just, if you want to promote to the level of division head or above, which is basically special agent in charge or assistant director in charge, or assistant director of a substantive division, this is just a part of your life now. And like, I also want to be clear, like, there aren't that many polygraphers in the FBI. This is, like everything, that it has a finite resource, and if they're trying to figure out who's making fun of Kash Patel for wearing a badge or a gun, they're not working on investigations.
Right. So, and apologies to everybody for the puppy barking, which is, that's going to happen sometimes. I am interested in what the mechanism by which this stops is. So somebody could sue. Congress could, but somebody's not going to sue.
Somebody's not going to sue because the people who are willing to submit to this are by definition willing to submit to it.
Right.
And like, look, these lawsuits take a really long time.
And they now
expensive.
only bind the individual parties. So
yeah, it's just, there are, I'm not quite sure what the right words are, but there are real barriers for most people to filing this sort of lawsuit.
Right.
Particularly in this sort of political environment where doing the slightest bit to stand up for yourself can result in pretty serious personal consequences.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is while you are an employee of the FBI who has any desire to advance in life,
Yeah,
you don't sue your employer. Is that fair?
I think that's good advice for any job, but yeah.
Yeah. Um, all right. So courts don't do things without a suit. So
Hmm.
you basically said the courts are out here.
Yeah. I mean,
Congress,
uh,
you'd have to care, right?
yeah, yeah. Like I suppose the minority could hold shadow hearings of some sort, but those have no real effect. They've got no subpoena or oversight power that matters at this point. There is nobody who's going to stop it. I mean, I guess maybe you could hope that the DOJ IG would look into it. But
Well,
The IG community has been pretty much defanged, and DOJ's IG, Michael Horowitz, who has previously never passed on an opportunity to go after FBI management or FBI personnel, has decided at this particular moment in time to walk away from those responsibilities. So there is no mechanism to check it.
yeah, so let's talk about Mr. Horowitz for a minute
Okay.
because I just detected a note of sarcasm in your voice.
Yeah.
Horowitz was a big presence during Trump 1 and during the Biden administration,
Yeah.
writing reports about the excesses of the FBI and its leadership in going after Trump, right? So
Yeah.
he famously wrote the Crossfire Hurricane
Yep.
report. He wrote a major report on
Mid-year exam. Yeah.
the Hillary Clinton investigation,
Yep. And a
and
million other things. I mean, I want to be clear, like, my sarcasm is based entirely on one interaction with his team that pretty much destroyed my confidence in their investigative acumen. I was, and I'm going to just give you wave tops here. I'm obviously not going to get into anything classified or sensitive, but there was one occasion where I had the opportunity to sit in on a review they were doing of some matters pertaining to combating foreign influence, and the briefing's going on for about an hour, and at one point, pretty far into the discussion, one of the investigators under Horowitz, he himself was not there, interrupts one of the speakers and says, "Excuse me, but for the past 55, 60 minutes, you've been referring to this thing called FARA. Can you explain what that is?" And so the speaker
for those
explained what the
who,
Foreign
like
Agent
GIG,
Registration
don't know
Act.
what FARA is the Foreign Agents Registration Act.
Yeah, and it's basically it is one of two foundational charges for any investigation into foreign influence. The other being 951. We don't need to get into the differences. It's not really important, but like it struck me that people who were weeks, if not months deep into a study of how the FBI was handling malign foreign influence, they didn't know what FARA was. Like, that didn't inspire confidence in the intellectual rigor of their enterprise.
All right, so, but the absence of rigor, to the extent that that's a problem, um, was not the problem may have been an absence of rigor, but the problem wasn't an absence of energy or interest.
Correct. Correct.
The alacrity with which the IG would announce an investigation of something was, I wouldn't say land speed record, but
It was pretty quick. Yeah.
it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
But then you have a remarkable lack of interest in ethical and legal issues that arose under Bill Barr, for example.
Well,
And
to be clear though, I'm now gonna defend Michael Horowitz in the IG's office. My understanding is that investigations and oversight of actual DOJ attorneys is not done by the IG. That's done by DOJ OPR. So I think if we're about to talk about why is he investigating the FBI all the time and why is he not focusing more on main justice,
No,
I
no,
think
no,
that's
no, no. That's not
okay.
where I was going with this.
Okay.
First of all, yes, there is jurisdictional
Yeah.
line between OPR, which does attorney conduct as attorneys, and
Yes.
but there are certain issues, for example, efforts by the uh, uh, head of the civil division to overthrow the leadership of the Justice Department and send, that aren't quite just like ethics issues, right? You know,
Foundational democratic issues. Yeah.
I mean, you would think
Yeah.
and then there are uh, also FBI issues that, as let's just say the energy devoted to mid-year exam and to Crossfire Hurricane was not shown in response to the question of uh, why did the FBI have so little warning of January 6th, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Which was a subject that eventually produced a brief report. But
Yeah.
uh, but then, like, fast forward to the resignation of Chris Wray,
Yeah.
and you have this reign of terror going on in the
Yeah.
FBI right now.
Mhm.
And I have not heard of any investigations opened by the IG related to any of this at all, including your situation, which was published, a story about which was published in the New York Times
Yeah.
a month ago,
Yeah.
and which you have now attested to in public on Lawfare.
Yeah.
We also have the small matter of the abuse of polygraph tests. We
Mhm.
have lots of stories about people being forced out improperly.
Yep.
Do you have any indication that the IG is interested in any of this at all?
No.
Have you been
No. No.
contacted by the IG?
No.
And what do you attribute that to?
Failures of nerve, lack of moral courage.
Um, all right, so the
I,
IG.
I mean, I hate to be that blunt, but like, I don't know what other reason there could be.
So IG is out as a
Yeah.
mechanism. Congress is out as a mechanism, at least until
For some
the
time.
midterms,
Yeah.
if not longer.
Mhm.
Uh, and so, are you saying, because what I take from what you're saying is that as long as the repression is internal to the government and it doesn't involve external facing issues that, for example, improper investigations against individuals who then might assert their own
Yeah.
rights, right?
Yeah.
But as long as you run a reign of terror internal to the federal government or internal to the FBI in particular, there's really nothing anybody can do about it.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm happy to go on that optimistic note. But also, I do want to tease one thing out that implicitly flows from that. As long as people don't care about this, and as long as it continues to happen, we're all less safe. Like, I hate to sound overly dramatic, but like, the FBI is a busy organization. It was not unheard of for me to pull all-nighters, for example. It is not unheard of for people to do shifts in the wee small hours of the morning. It's an organization that is going 24 hours a day to combat threats to the national security of the United States and the safety of its communities. And as long as its senior executives are wrapped up in petty, vindictive, internal inquiries about whether they've made a joke at the expense of Cash Patel or Dan Bongino, they're not focused on those threats and those dangers. So, there's a real irony in this. I consider myself a pretty conservative national security hawk. And there's a lot of other conservative national security hawks who right now are.
That makes you part of the hard left now, Mike, because I consider myself a conservative national security
Yeah,
hawk too, and apparently that makes you just this side to the right of AOC and Bernie Sanders.
yeah, we won't get into it. There is no world in which where somebody can go through a list of my policy preferences and call me a member of the left. So this is all pretty amusing to me. But
Don't worry, they will.
I know. It's already happened. If you really care about national security, it should concern you now that the internal workings of the FBI resemble nothing so much as like the Russian SVR or the Chinese MSS in the environment immediately following a political purge or ideological restructuring. Like, part of the reason we were able to win the Cold War against the Soviet Union, and there's a lot of really good books on this, is that like the internal functioning of the KGB was so invariably screwed up on a regular basis that they were just never able to get ahead of us in the intel game, particularly after they invaded Afghanistan. There's a phenomenal book called The Main Enemy that really gets into this. But like, that's what we look like now on the inside. It's just, this isn't good for the national security of the United States. And if I can hammer home any point in all these interviews I'm doing, look, I don't like Cash Patel or Dan Bongino. I think they're sort of clowns. But I'm not doing this out of a desire to make fun of them or undermine them. I'm doing this because we need to shine a light on how ineffective our national security state is becoming.
All right, so I want to ask you a completely unfair question that I want to say at the outset.
I'm probably not going to answer.
No.
Okay.
You may.
Yeah.
I'm asking it because I think
Yeah.
you may have an interesting thought about it, but you're completely unqualified to answer.
Okay.
Which is, you've described a measure of internal diversion from mission
Yeah.
that comes from kind of internal investigation of people and suspicion of people.
Yeah.
There are some other diversions from mission going on. One is, they're all related, but one is getting rid of people with substantial institutional experience,
Yeah.
right? One and issue area expertise. You're an example of that as well.
Yeah.
Another one is diverting mission explicitly from onto things that are objectively less important from a national security perspective, like immigration enforcement. And then another is, announcing that we're not doing criminal FARA enforcement, right, anymore,
Yeah.
right? Just kind of overt dismantling of mission. So when you aggregate in your mind all the things that that we're doing,
Yeah.
and the sort of obviously no institution is perfect from a mission focus point of view.
Yeah.
No institution is 100% on mission. But if you think about the FBI fall of 2024
Yeah.
under Chris Wray,
Yep.
for whom my enthusiasm is, I assure you, under control. But and then what percentage of mission diversion has happened? How much of the institution we have sort of shifted away from critical mission to less critical, whether it's less critical substantively or less critical because it shouldn't be happening at all. how much diversion is really going on here? Is this uh, you know, when you say we're less safe, how much less FBI do we have than we did 6 months ago?
So, um, all right, I'm going to give a somewhat complicated, nuanced answer to that, and I'm going to caveat it at the very
Because it's a
beginning.
completely unfair question
I
that
no, no. Look,
it's just a thought prompt.
it's not an unfair question at all. This is the sort of question that I wish more Americans and elected officials were asking of the FBI leadership. Um, let's unpack it. Let me first begin that like I am politically conservative. I studied constitutional law under people like Steve Calabrese and John McGinnis. I, to a certain extent, subscribe to the theory of the unitary executive. Um, if the president and executive branch officers want to deprioritize or otherwise increase the importance of particular investigative priorities, I actually don't have an issue with that. My concern is that I just want to make sure before that's done, hard conversations about potential second and third order consequences are being had. And at the time I was in the FBI for the first 6 months of this brave new world we're in, I didn't see that happening. And for 3.5 of those 6 months, I was the acting special agent in charge of the field office. I was sitting in on the meetings with the seventh floor. I was regularly communicating with the very top executives at the FBI. And I saw nothing but frustration among those executives that nobody was asking them what is being sacrificed in order to staff these new priorities. So again, my complaints are not so much about what they're choosing to pursue. It is entirely about the opportunity costs of what they are not. And I can't put a percentage on that. I don't know that anybody could. You know, the FBI does do a lot of, or at least it did, a lot of quantitative measurements of how they're performing, and it's usually done every 6 months. But you know, I'm not privy to that anymore, so I'd be reluctant. I can tell you there are a couple investigative areas about which I am very concerned. Two of which about I am very concerned in the short term. Two of which I am much more concerned about the long term. To a degree that I think could actually affect our standing in the world.
Can you say what those areas are?
Yeah, of course. So the short term is civil rights and public corruption. It's not a secret. It's been reported on at Main Justice. Those two departments have been pretty much eviscerated. I think they're way down in staffing, both through a combination of voluntary exits and just involuntary dismissals. And you know, a lot of FBI agents don't like to admit this, but we're kind of useless without prosecutors. We can investigate something. We can't actually submit a charging document or hold a trial without the help of both an AUSA and Main Justice. And if Main Justice is not interested in corruption investigations or civil rights investigations, there's not really anybody else doing that. So that's just something that, you know, the American people can expect not to happen for the next 3.5 years. The things that concern me a little bit more, not necessarily because they're more important, just because they're things I focused on, are domestic terrorism and the China threat. Domestic terrorism, I don't think we're going to have a Timothy McVeigh, hopefully, in the next couple of years. Like, look, the right-wing militia movement kind of has what it wants in elected officials right now. The chance of them enacting a huge plot are probably pretty slim. They might go after specific political actors with whom they disagree, but like their worldview is pretty much being confirmed right now. But we do need to note, like, administrations don't last forever, majorities change, and every week, month, year that those organizations are able to continue developing the logistics and capabilities for violent action makes us less safe, even if they're not leveraging those abilities at the moment. Um, what I'm really concerned about, what I still lose sleep over, and what I hope to really explore over the next few years is the threat we're facing by taking our eye off of the ball when it comes to the PRC. Um, Xi Jinping is a leader who is pretty much unparalleled in terms of his ambition or his longevity in contemporary Chinese history. To the extent you had any opening up or modernization under the administration of Deng Xiaoping or his intellectual progeny, um, that has sort of taken a back seat to the ubiquitous surveillance state in China and their worldwide ambitions to supplant the United States as a sole superpower. You see that in their development projects and building out of infrastructure in the third world, trying to recruit unaligned nations. You see that in their stated objectives of being able to enact a cross-strait invasion in a very short time period, which is coming up. You see that in their militarization, which unfortunately the United States under previous administrations allowed to happen in the South China Seas, and the creation of islands that can be used for military functions. That is where we should be focusing national security efforts right now. And not only do I not see that happening, the New York Times had a story, not just about the FBI, but about the CIA, and I have no idea if it's true. I just know the reporting I saw. There were stories about the CIA cutting massive amounts of case officers, including those who had been hired as part of a push to get more China knowledge. You see us enacting a punitive trade policy, which is driving smaller nations in East Asia into the arms of the Chinese. You see it in us removing aid programs which helped the third world that are now being filled by the PRC. We don't want to live in a world where famine aid is coming from the Chinese government. We don't want to live in a world where ports in mineral-rich environments are being built by the Chinese government. We don't want to live in a world where there are more bilateral trade agreements with China than there are the United States. And that's simply because every single one of those things is driving allies we are desperately going to need if there's ever a military conflict into the arms of an implacable enemy. Sorry, I
We
feel
are going to
a
leave
little
it
bit
there
passionate
on
about
that cheerful note. Mike Feinberg, welcome to the other side of the conversation. You're a great American, and you have this link now. And one of the things about that link is it just slips you up on the screen at any time. And once you've been a guest on Dogshirt TV, you are welcome back anytime with or without an announcement. You can just show up, as some of our former guests do. Keep the link and come back and visit us some other time.
Be careful what you offer, because I literally have nothing else to do these days. So
You're
count me in.
welcome anytime.
Thanks,
Talk to you
man.
soon.
Have a good one.